I wasn't liking what I was seeing from the response at the local level, and we should be very, very good at this now.
I mean, the FEMA response was so ungodly slow. I mean, we're in New Orleans. How many people died in the Superdome? How many people died right there at the convention center because it took them like 5 days to bring water in? You know, like that should not happen. But it still happens, you know? But that's what now requires people to, we just take it into our own hands now. So material wasn't being brought to the southern end of the parish, and we knew that. The National Guard, it took them like 5 or 7 days before they were even down there. And so Richie was like, I'm not waiting around.
I was thinking of more of, you know, how do I save my community or buy us more time, right? But I do remember just, you know, kind of breathing in some air and just thinking like, you know, this is going to be a lot of work, but I want to do it. During the aftermath of Hurricane Ida, it took 2 or 3 days to even get our bearings, you know, what's going on, what's happening. And so once we were able to get gas in the boat, we started bringing like military meals, drinking water, and ice and stuff, right? And so it was something like a 26-hour round trip. But we were having to go gather these supplies, put gas in the boat, and also like feed ourselves and do all of the communications, right? So I had messages flying in from Instagram, from Facebook, my phone itself, email. We would put out ask, like, look, this is what we need. We need dog food. You know, we need this, we need that.
So we were making trips still back and forth, you know, bringing people medication, bringing spark plugs for generators, you know, things like that that they needed that they were not going to get from the National Guard. And then it became very apparent that there was lots of cats and dogs that were left behind because people do it. And, you know, most hotels don't allow you to bring dogs in or cats in. And so it's really unfortunate that that's what happens. So Richie put out a call on his Facebook, you know, asking, you know, if you have a pet at home, give us your address. We've got a bunch of dog food. Because I actually bought the whole first boatload of dog food myself. I went into the grocery store in Plaquemines Parish and bought every single bag of dog food, every single can. I bought the whole freaking pet aisle. I don't even know how much money I spent, didn't even matter. Bought the whole pet aisle, put it in the boat, and we went down there. And then people started giving us some cash donations to do that continually, and then the LSSPCA came through, and they're like, oh, here's some cat food and dog food. I mean, you could have saved me a lot of money, but it's fine. We would go to Port Sulphur and meet the firemen and police that were still stationed down there, and they would help offload the boat and then bring it to the firehouse for people. So we were using Facebook really. For the most part, we would post up on Facebook like we just delivered X amount, whatever. If you need it, go to, you know, the Buras Fire Department or the Port Sulphur Fire Department. This is where it's located. What we did to me is so important. Like, I feel like a little bit more light needs to be shed on it because it kind of shows the breakdown of the governmental agencies and what happens when people take it into their own hands. And so I hate to say FEMA's not doing anything. I know they are. They're helping some people, but it's not the scale that we need. It's not with the urgency that's needed. And really, a lot of times, it feels like people are kind of being tricked. You know, I sat there with Richie after the hurricane, right? We were together for the whole thing, bringing food and all this stuff. And he was applying for his own federal aid, right? Well, the website didn't work on the phone, wasn't mobile friendly. I was like, well, what do they think? That the hurricane just hit? Do you really think I can use my computer with internet at home? We don't have power. And so they make information really inaccessible. I would hope it's not done on purpose. Maybe it's just not done with a whole bunch of forethought. I don't know. But the process is so difficult for people to walk through. It's just very inaccessible. And so people just give up. They just don't apply for the aid. And then the communities rally together to help each other out. It shouldn't have to be that way. People shouldn't have to organize themselves. That we're paying our taxes, we're doing our stuff. We should be able to rely on the agencies that are there to help us.
For instance, where we're at right now, Plaquemines Parish, it's still owed money from FEMA for Katrina recovery. Usually, say for like a small business administration loan, you know, you're going to need to show proof of loss, proof of the property that's owned by you. There's vulnerable people that are, it's like this storm happened a week ago at their house. You know, they're on a fixed income. Maybe they're falling through the cracks in one way or another, where it's like maybe they're living on family land, so they can't produce a deed or a title or anything like that, so they can't get an SBA loan, or, you know, the FEMA money that they might be receiving to help kind of get their lives back in order is very limited due to them maybe not technically owning their property on paper. And so the most vulnerable people are often falling through the cracks, and that's tough, you know. there's a lot of things that aren't really seen on paper that really make it hard for these folks to get the traction they need to get their lives back in order.
And what if they've lost those papers in the hurricane, then what?
That's definitely a thing. I think most people are starting to know better by now, but some people are, a little bit more disorganized than others, or have, there's those higher barriers to entry for them to even get that help that they need. Some people don't even know it exists at all, and they just kind of pave their own way. Now, what's going on is your flood insurance reflects your risk, right? And where it's not kind of spread out across a census tract, but at your own address. So, for instance, my backyard is 4.9 feet below sea level, right? And so now, all of a sudden, these new flood maps had to be adopted here. And so the base flood elevation at my house went from about 3 feet above sea level. Now it's 13 feet above sea level. Well, I'm starting 5 feet below sea level right now, and FEMA wants 2 feet of freeboard. And so to get my home elevated, which it's a smaller home on a smaller footprint, it's about $55,000. Now, for a regular American home, it would probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of $175,000 to elevate my home to base flood elevation. So effectively what's happening is working people are being forced off of the coast. Now, if you're a doctor or a lawyer or have the means to come down here and build a hardened concrete structure 19 or 20 feet in the air and you want to do that, you can do that. And what the problem was, it seems to me that the bureaucrats and politicians maybe realized that it was unsustainable to have people on the coast, but they could never tell them you can't be there. That's a bit un-American. So they just whipped it with bureaucracy. So for instance, some of my constituents here, they're in their mid-70s. They've rebuilt their house after Katrina, but now they're not going to be able to afford flood insurance, and they're certainly not going to be able to afford or have the wherewithal to rebuild after the next major hurricane. And it's not just if they wanted to, they could rebuild their house at grade. Anything that's more than 51% damage has to go, the first floor has to go to base flood elevation. So here it is, like we're forcing the elderly out of communities they've been in their whole lives. We're forcing working people that in some cases have literally been forced to the ends of the earth, whether it was, home Indians being forced off of that Trail of Tears, quite literally, or other people that have literacy issues or immigrated here from another country that are trying to get their foothold here.
These are people that if they have to move somewhere else, they're not going to make it, because they have this generational business, and that's just how it works down here. So people don't want to move. Their whole identity is tied to a business, to this place, to this location. They're not going to move.
I don't want to have to go, but at some point, folks will, and I'm going to figure out a way to eke it out around here. I'm going to live on a boat or on stilts or whatever.
People can live in these areas. It takes a lot of forethought and a lot of work, but you still can live down here, and you can do what you can while you're here to save the coast and save these areas.